The Ducati GP25 is no longer just a motorcycle. It's a living paradox of carbon and doubt, an orchestra of micro-vibrations balanced on the edge of genius and disaster. Every millimeter of its frame hides a secret frequency. Every curve a suppressed scream of torque and fragility. In Marquez's hands, it becomes something else, a wild equation that breathes, hesitates, then obeys as if it fears him more than gravity itself. The front end flutters at 9.3 Hz, telemetry misaligns with reality, and the sensors insist he should have crashed 3 times before the checkered flag. Yet he doesn't. He rides through the noise like a man listening to music only he can hear. Inside Borgo Panigale's red sanctum, faith fractures under fluorescent light. Bagnaia's silence weighs more than any crash. Engineers stare at data that no longer fits the laws they built their careers upon, and Carlo Pernat's warning echoes like prophecy. The cracks are real, and instinct is the only glue left. The GP25 isn't evolving. It's mutating under the will of a rider who bends physics with nerve endings instead of code. When he leans, you feel the air tear. When he brakes, the bike bleeds speed as if exhaling fear. It's no longer man versus machine. It's man rewriting the machine's language mid-corner. And as Aragon rises in the heat, the story isn't about who wins. It's about which will give way first, the bike's titanium heart or the human one beating inside it. Because in MotoGP 2025, perfection doesn't roar anymore. It trembles. And when it trembles, only Marquez decides if it breaks or transcends. And that's where it begins, in the space between data and destiny, where the GP25's perfection fractures and Marquez's instinct steps in to hold the whole illusion together. They call it perfection, but inside that red armor, something trembles. The GP25 is a cathedral of speed built on unstable ground, a sculpture that vibrates like glass at full throttle. Every lap is a confession whispered in carbon fiber, every correction a prayer to physics. Marquez doesn't ride it, he possesses it, molding the Desmosedici as if his bones were part of its frame. That bike has cracks, and Marquez hides them with instinct, Pernat said, his voice slicing through the paddock like cold air over steel. The words linger, sharp and prophetic, as if the machine itself heard them and flinched. Beneath the glossy fairing, engineers chase a ghostly vibration at 9.3 Hz, a harmonic distortion no algorithm can cancel. The bike shudders under full lean, but Marquez absorbs it with his body, a human dam holding back a mechanical river. Inside his helmet, the voice of doubt speaks in static. If I stop feeling her, she'll stop believing in me. He breaks 12 meters later than physics should allow, yet never crosses the invisible line between control and collapse. In telemetry, he's an anomaly, a sine wave that refuses to smooth. Bagnaia watches from the next garage, silent, his confidence eroded by the same machine that once made him invincible. The engineers pretend not to see the split, but it grows each weekend like a hairline fracture in marble. The red box smells of rubber, oil, and fear. Outside, fans see dominance. Inside, they sense dissonance. Ducati has built a masterpiece that only one man can tame, and that truth burns brighter than victory. It's not a war but a weather system, Marquez the lightning, the bike the storm cloud holding its breath. And when he crosses the line, the stopwatch confirms what everyone fears. The cracks remain, only hidden by instinct. The myth of mechanical perfection is dying, and in its place, something far more human is being born, a legend stitched together by control, chaos, and the silence between heartbeats. In the dim light of the Ducati control room, numbers glow like constellations no one can read anymore. The GP25's front end lives on the edge of collapse, a trembling wire stretched between speed and surrender. Engineers talk of damping ratios and torsional resonance, yet the truth hums at 9 Hz, a heartbeat too fast for comfort. On a monitor, Marquez's data looks wrong. Throttle peaks where braking should live, lean angles that curve beyond reason. He bends physics, murmurs a technician, half in awe, half in fear. The simulator tried to copy his style last night and crashed mid-lap, the algorithm freezing at the instant he saved a slide with his hip. Bagnaia watches the replay and whispers, "How can I fight a ghost made of numbers?" The front tire, Michelin Soft Compound F 2025, loses pressure by 0.07 bar under his braking load, an invisible bleed that shifts the bike's destiny each corner. Morbidelli calls it a nightmare. Bastianini calls it a curse, but Marquez just listens to the tremor through his palms. He writes short notes on a grease-stained page. Turn 7, the front floats. Don't stop the bike. Let it slide. It reads like haiku carved into aluminum. The engineers hate those lines. They want equations, not poetry. Yet each sentence holds a secret geometry, a rhythm between grip and grace no sensor can decode. Ducati's pride, built on software precision, is unraveling in front of a man who trusts instinct more than telemetry. The GP25 doesn't obey him. It converses, murmuring its limits through microvibrations and metallic sighs. When he exits the corner, the front wheel quivers, searching for future that hasn't been programmed. The others see chaos, but he feels coherence in the noise. The mismatch between data and reality isn't a flaw. It's the soul escaping the spreadsheet. And in that divergence, amid the hiss of electronics and breathless silence, a new law is written. The machine lies, but Marquez tells the truth. In the quiet corridors of Borgo Panigale, where walls remember victories better than men, the air hums with an unease that no engineer can calibrate. Marquez walks through that silence like a surgeon entering an operating room, every movement deliberate, every glance measured against ghosts in red uniforms. He doesn't speak much. He studies, listens, absorbs the rhythm of tension that vibrates like an unbalanced crankshaft. Inside, he knows this isn't just about riding. It's about rewriting the DNA of a dynasty that fears its own evolution. If control is my cage, then chaos will set me free, he thinks, tightening the strap of his glove as if sealing a pact with himself. The others call him cold, but there's fire under that composure, a storm disguised as geometry. Bagnaia watches from the next pit, eyes fixed on telemetry he no longer trusts. Numbers once his allies, now foreign hieroglyphs. My best is no longer enough, he admits, voice low, stripped to the arrogance that once filled podiums. That sentence doesn't echo. It sinks, heavy as oil, into concrete. Around them, Ducati divides, the old guard clutching tradition, the new blood drawn to Marquez's lunacy, seeing in his control of chaos a new gospel. Meetings turn into duels fought with data, smiles masking fractures that widen by the hour. One engineer whispers that Bagnaia rides by logic, Marquez by instinct, and logic is losing. Each evening, Marquez studies his own doubts like a mechanic studies stress lines in titanium, measured, methodical, afraid to blink. He knows the box eyes him as both savior and threat, paradox on two wheels. The noise outside, the fans, the cameras, means nothing. The real battle hums beneath the fluorescent lights, where faith and fear share the same coffee machine. Ducati was once an empire of certainty. Now it trembles between two philosophies of truth. One worships control, the other worships the man who dismantles it. And in that fragile balance, where silence is louder than applause, the legend of Marquez grows, not as a conqueror, but as the architect of doubt. Carlo Pernat's words still hover over the paddock like smoke that refuses to fade. The GP25 has cracks, and Marquez hides them with instinct. It wasn't just an observation, it was an omen. Now, in the fluorescent glow of post-race debriefs, that prophecy feels closer to revelation than analysis. Ducati's empire, built on precision and faith in its red perfection, is trembling from within. The engineers stare at graphs as if they were maps of a kingdom in revolt. Every podium Marquez earns doesn't confirm their success. It exposes their illusion. His victories are confessions, each one a reminder that genius, not machinery, keeps the myth alive. Do we develop for Marquez or for Ducati? Someone asks in a meeting that should have been about tire pressure, but turns into theology. No one answers. The silence weighs more than any failure. Bagnaia looks down. Piero shifts uneasily, and the air feels electric, charged with the awareness that their perfect creation depends on imperfection incarnate. The GP25 doesn't obey data anymore. It obeys Marquez's pulse, his microscopic movements that make sense only to him. A young aerodynamicist, pale and trembling, whispers, "What if it's us who don't understand him?" And everyone freezes as if he'd blasphemed against the company's code. In that moment, the facade of control fractures, revealing the fragile truth beneath the carbon fiber. Ducati is evolving faster than its own identity. The machine that once unified a factory now divides it, a beautiful monster that loves only one rider. Outside, the fans chant, unaware that the real battle happens not on the track but in the rooms where pride meets genius. Inside, equations crumble, hierarchies shift, and belief turns to doubt. Pernat had called it before anyone dared to admit it. The cracks weren't mechanical, they were human. The red myth is dying, but in its collapse, a new story is being born, written not in numbers but in heartbeat intervals. The age of the perfect machine is over. What remains is the raw, trembling brilliance of the man who forced it to reveal its soul. The paddock breathes like a lung before a scream, each gust of wind through the awnings charged with a metallic scent of rain and tension. Silverstone's clouds hang low, their shadows sliding over the red of Ducati's box like omens painted by exhausted gods. Inside, everything feels too still, the kind of silence that comes before an earthquake. Mechanics move with ritual precision, tools clinking like rosary beads, eyes fixed on a GP25 as if it were both idol and heretic. The air is thick with unspoken truths. A storm that hasn't yet exploded, but rumbles under the skin. A journalist murmurs into his recorder, unaware he's captured the heartbeat of a revolution. Marquez crosses the paddock alone, hands behind his back, posture calm, gaze sharp enough to slice the humidity. He looks less like a racer and more like a monk carrying the secret of fire. Each step echoes off the asphalt with the inevitability of a countdown. Bagnaia watches him for the hospitality window, his reflection split between pride and defeat. He walks as if the world has already decided. Pecco thinks, the words curdling in his throat. The red box, once a temple of glory, has become a chamber of ghosts, posters fading, trophies gleaming like accusations. Engineers whisper in code, as if language itself might betray them. Outside, thunder finally rolls, but it's nothing compared to the vibration inside the team. Instinct against method, chaos against order, man against myth. This is no longer rivalry. It's an existential collision, a mirror turned toward MotoGP's soul. Somewhere in the hum of generators and the scent of wet tarmac, a truth forms like condensation. If Marquez wins with an imperfect Ducati, he will eclipse Rossi, not in numbers, but in narrative. And when the storm finally breaks, it won't fall from the sky. It will rise from the red earth of Borgo Panigale, where history itself holds its breath. Morning in Aragon arrives like a held breath, thin air, pale sun, and the low hum of engines waking from uneasy dreams. The circuit lies under a film of heat, the kind that bends light and blurs certainties. Inside the Ducati garage, the red feels darker, heavier, as if the color itself knows what's at stake. Marquez studies the data, his face unreadable, fingers tracing the oscillation curve of the GP25's front end like a seismograph predicting an earthquake. The vibration hasn't gone away. It has learned to hide, just as he has. If she survives me, she becomes something greater, he whispers to himself, not sure if he's talking about the bike or his own legend. Engineers speak in short sentences, stripped of optimism, their voices brittle under the weight of expectation. The software team ran overnight simulations again. 3 models crashed before lap 7. The conclusion was terrifying in its simplicity. The GP25 doesn't fail. It fractures slowly from within. We either evolve with him or we break, says the chief engineer, voice trembling like an over-revved piston. Bagnaia watches from the corner, jaw tight, a man measuring his own disappearance. Pernat's warning lingers like static, cracks, instinct, and the myth of control. The garage is no longer a workplace. It's a laboratory of destiny, every tool echoing with the ghost of choices undone. Outside, the crowd roars, but the sound feels distant, muffled by history, waiting to turn a page. Marquez slips on his gloves with monk-like calm, sealing the distance between genius and ruin. He knows Ducati's empire balances on a blade thinner than tire compound. The GP25 will either evolve with him or collapse under him. There is no middle ground left, only speed and consequence. As he rolls toward the grid, the horizon wavers in the heat, and for a moment, time itself seems to lean. The next race isn't another round. It's a reckoning, and every heartbeat on pit lane knows it. Carlo Pernat has seen dynasties collapse before, but never one as polished, as seemingly indestructible as Ducati's. He watches Bagnaia now the way a historian studies the last king before the fall, noting every detail. The slower blink, the careful smile, the silence that lasts a heartbeat too long. The throne isn't lost on the track, he murmurs, voice low and dry. It's lost in the silence of the box. In those few words, he dissects a tragedy still unfolding beneath red banners and corporate pride. Pecco sits by the telemetry screens, staring at green traces that no longer belong to him, his own lines dipped in red like fading blood pressure. The engineers whisper, their faith shifting molecule by molecule toward the man who bends the bike rather than follows it. Pernat doesn't need data. He reads the mood in the room like a pulse. He sees mechanics moving around Pecco without the reverence they once had, their gestures quicker, more functional, as if adjusting a machine, not serving a champion. He's still fast, he tells a journalist beside him, but the bike doesn't follow him anymore. The phrase lands like a scalpel on truth. Ducati has always built its myth on the fusion of man and machine, but now the link is fraying. Bagnaia's elegance, the methodical, rhythmic grace that once made him untouchable, has turned brittle. His style, sculpted in logic, finds no purchase in a bike that now responds only to instinct. Pernat knows what that means. The fall has already begun. Only the timing remains. Around them, the hum of compressors and laptops sounds like the last breath of certainty. The champion's seat, once a throne, has become a confession booth. Pecco speaks less each weekend, smiles less, feels more. Every question from the press lands like gravel on an open wound. Ducati's red, once a symbol of fire, looks tonight like the color of exhaustion. Pernat inhales, squints at the box, and thinks not of statistics, but of destiny unraveling in real time. What he sees is not defeat, but erosion, slow and invisible, a crown dissolving grain by grain until only pride remains. Carlo Pernat leans against the pit wall at Aragon, the wind pulling smoke from his cigarette in thin, nervous spirals. His gaze follows the GP25 as it warms up, its exhaust note sharp, uneven, almost human. If you build the bike around fear, he says quietly, it will never love its rider again. The sentence drifts into the air like prophecy disguised as resignation. Around him, engineers murmur over graphs, discussing traction maps, throttle delivery, thermal coefficients, but none of that explains the unease crawling through the team. The GP25 was once born from courage, raw and imperfect, a machine that rewarded audacity. Now it feels calculated, cornered, overmanaged. Bagnaia rides it with the precision of a mathematician tracing a vanishing equation, but the numbers keep slipping through his fingers. Pernat notices the subtle tremor in Pecco's right hand when he removes his glove, a tiny betrayal, invisible to the cameras. The problem isn't the front end, he tells a young engineer. It's the courage that's gone missing. The boy nods, not understanding. The GP25's electronic brain limits wheel spin to 3.2% at full lean, but Marquez rides past that boundary, opening the throttle by instinct rather than permission. Fear has become the new variable, rewriting the DNA of Ducati one safety algorithm at a time. Pernat knows what that means. He's seen it before in other eras, other champions swallowed by logic. In trying to protect their masterpiece, they've stripped it of rebellion. And without rebellion, Ducati is just another manufacturer chasing ghosts. Bagnaia feels it too. The subtle disconnection between motion and meaning, between being fast and feeling alive. He stares at the telemetry, knowing the lines won't ever love him back. Pernat watches and exhales smoke toward the horizon. For him, the tragedy isn't that Pecco is slower, it's that he's become careful. And in MotoGP, careful is the first step toward extinction. As the engines howl to life and the red light bleeds into green, Pernat's words hang above the pit like truth etched in carbon. The moment you stop trusting the chaos, the machine stops trusting you. Night falls over Aragon, and the paddock empties slowly, like a theater after a tragedy no one dares to name. The floodlights hum over the Ducati box, illuminating tools left half-cleaned, laptops still glowing with unread data. Inside, the air is thick with exhaustion and something heavier, realization. The GP25 rests under its cover, silent and tense, a predator unsure if it has won or merely survived. Marquez's leathers hang on the wall, sweat drying into salt, proof that instinct still outweighs engineering. Bagnaia's helmet lies beside them, untouched, its visor reflecting the dim red of a logo that suddenly feels too bright for the moment. In the stillness, Carlo Pernat's voice cuts through memory itself. Every empire ends not with a crash, but with a whisper. The words feel inevitable, the way truth always does when it's been circling too long. Ducati's legend, its order, its pride, its perfection, has been rewritten by a man who ignored its commandments and rode through its flaws until they became strengths. The cracks Pernat spoke of were never just in carbon or metal. They were in belief, in the idea that machinery could replace the hunger of men. The telemetry confirms nothing, yet everyone knows what it means. The GP25 no longer belongs to Ducati. It belongs to whoever dares to dance with its chaos. Marquez has done more than win. He has infected the team with doubt and possibility, equal parts poison and cure. Bagnaia, standing in the shadows, understands at last that the bike didn't betray him. It outgrew him. Outside, the wind sweeps through the pit lane, carrying the faint scent of rubber and inevitability. Tomorrow, they'll all start again, pretending the world hasn't shifted. But deep inside Borgo Panigale's walls, where trophies glimmer like relics, the silence tells another story, Perfection is over, and from its ruins, something far more dangerous has been born.